Welcome to another episode of the CattleUSA Daily Podcast. Today we have an amazing guest on that I am super excited to continuously chat more about with and all of the things. Gary Lezak is on with us with Weather 2020. And Gary, I would love it if you could just take it away, share a little bit about this new and exciting partnership between CattleUSA and Weather 2020, what we kind of have going on with this, and just a little bit about yourself.
Lauren, hey, thank you so much, and I appreciate it. I listened to one of your podcasts. You're doing fantastic. Love this already, so you're amazing. So good luck with all this. What's amazing is Weather 2020 is partnering with CattleUSA, and we're excited to bring you and share with you this breakthrough weather technology. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about what the LRC is. There's a discovery I made 38 years ago. The pattern is cycling regularly, and I think there's many advantages and takeaways for your listeners out there and for people that are associated with CattleUSA. And as we go through this in the next few weeks, months, and years, we will provide an advantage to make that clear for you. So basically, there's a lot of things that weather impacts, and we can talk about those weather impacts from week to week if you want to. But right now, here we are recording this in mid-February on Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
It's Valentine's Day. So, but on this Valentine's Day, the weather pattern is absolutely fascinating. There's this big atmospheric jigsaw. And the LRC, which was named after me, the Lezak Recurring Cycle, was named back in 2002, 2003, when I started making these long-range forecasts. And that was 15 years in the making, just so you know. And by getting these forecasts predicted months out, and then they would actually happen, the bloggers, I had a very popular blog there when I was on TV. I was on TV for 38 years and doing the weather in Kansas City and in Oklahoma City. But the bloggers thought it should be named something, so they named it the GRC for my name, Gary's Recurring Cycle. And the next day someone said, no, it should be called the LRC for Lezak Recurring Cycle. So that's how it got named. I got a mural on my wall behind me that shows a 1-foot snowstorm that happened in Oklahoma City in the winter of 1987, 1988. And about 6 weeks later, there was another 1-foot snowstorm in Oklahoma City. And this is in a place that averages only 8 inches of snow a year. And I noticed that the weather patterns were cycling. I developed my hypothesis way back then, about 38 years ago. And here we are today making accurate predictions for winter storms, cold outbreaks, warm spells, floods, drought, and so much more, tropical storms and severe weather outbreaks accurately. And some of those predictions are actually 91 to 92% accurate, especially on whether there will be a storm there or not, is very accurate. So anyway, that's what we do, and I hope to bring these insights to you and the issues that people associated with CattleUSA are dealing with each week and each month, and providing insights and information that is really going to be usable for people planning months ahead.
Yeah, we're so excited about this partnership with the Weather 2020 team and with Gary and everyone else that is just going to be able to bring on a wealth of information to our entire customer and client base here at CattleUSA, and just keep you guys informed and connected, because we all know all too well that the weather plays a very large role in the outcome of our businesses as ranchers and as agriculturalists. So Gary, I would love it if you could just jump right in. What do we have on the horizon? You and I are going to talk pretty frequently about the weather and stuff like that, but for this first episode, I kind of want to talk about maybe just some overall basic things we're going to be seeing, whether it be like this spring, in the coming weeks, whatever that kind of is looking like. We're seeing a lot of crazy weather patterns across the U.S. right now, so I'd love if we could just talk a little bit more about what you're seeing coming up.
Absolutely. Let's start with what's going on right now, and we'll relate that to long-range forecasting. Right now, here on this Valentine's Day, there's a storm that's coming into the western United States. It brought them some badly needed rain over those fire-ravaged regions of Southern California. yesterday. They're still going to end up below average for the season, but they got some rain yesterday. It's great. That storm's coming out into the plains, and it's caught in a part of the pattern that we predicted that would be coming across Nebraska, Kansas this weekend. So it's like we knew there was a big blizzard. Kansas City had an 11-inch snow and a big blizzard on January the 5th, and the part of the pattern that's coming through on Saturday is actually directly related to that blizzard. Amazingly, the blizzard part of the pattern we're in the fourth cycle of this year's pattern, and I'll explain more on that later. But in the 3 previous cycles, the blizzard happened, but the other 2 cycles didn't have much snow. So it's 1 out of 3, which means there's really a 33% chance it's going to produce another blizzard, not a 100% chance like some of these situations are. And Kansas City, it is so close to being a small blizzard on Saturday. We'll see what happens. But it was followed by another snowstorm, and that's coming next week, Monday and Tuesday. And as that approaches, snow is going to spread across parts of Wyoming into western Nebraska, across southern Nebraska, centered on Kansas City or south of there, and a few inches of snow, and a brutally cold Arctic blast is coming down. Possibly the strongest Arctic blast of the season is going to sweep in, and it's going to drop to way below zero on temperatures by Wednesday morning, mid next week. There's a couple things that are causing this. Number one, we knew it was coming because of the LRC, the pattern of cycling. How cold it would be, we're never really sure. But there's this thing called the Arctic Oscillation. It right now at this moment is dipping as low negative as it has in years. And it's not shocking that it's being associated with this brutally cold Arctic air mass. The bad news, it's a brutally cold Arctic air mass where we have to deal with really harsh cold temperatures. And so how does that impact you at CattleUSA? You can tell me. And then also, it should be the final blow of the season when it comes to Arctic blasts. So the outlook for the next 10 to 15 days is for the pattern to warm up. There are 2 phases of this year's cycling pattern. This year's cycling pattern is cycling in about every 6 weeks, just so you know, about 41 to 42 days, roughly, somewhere in that range. And so as the pattern is cycling, here I got to turn this off just a second. As the pattern is cycling regularly, we know how everything is going to line up. So this warm-up is absolutely also in the forecast from weeks ago, about within the next 10 days. There are 2 phases, though, of the LRC. Phase 1 is a stormier phase where storms will drop into New Mexico and impact Nebraska and Kansas. Our model is predicting a wet spring. It's hard to say that when you're talking about western Nebraska and western Kansas. But that region we're expecting and forecasting a little bit above average on precipitation, and possibly a lot above average on precipitation. Mostly rain, although some late season snows are going to be possible. So that's how it's lining up at this moment. That's what I see at this second.
Yeah, that's super insightful. I know just for a lot of cattle producers out there and stuff like that, this Arctic and winter blast that we're going to be seeing, Gary, coming up soon, is this going to be kind of relatable to the one that we saw last year where we were seeing like the negative 20 degrees and like some pretty intense temperatures here in the Midwest? What are we I know you can't really predict the numbers a whole lot on that, but what are we kind of thinking on this Arctic blast that's coming?
Yeah, I'm going to look at it right now just to see what the latest is. The latest data that just came out, and look at those temperatures, because it's the fact that it's after Valentine's Day, it can still get very, very cold, and we're about to experience it. Mid-January Arctic outbreaks are usually stronger, but this one, I'm looking at the latest data that just came out, and it has in Montana down to minus 30 degrees.
Okay.
In Nebraska, it gets down to minus 16, way up in northwest Nebraska. And then it's below zero on Wednesday morning and Thursday morning, maybe down to 10 and 15 below zero. And then it moderates and it's back up to about 32 degrees for a low by Friday. So Friday, it warms up. The Friday morning's cold. By Saturday morning, it's finally up to near freezing for lows. So a big warm up by Friday. But between now and next Friday, a week from now, it's going to be brutally cold every morning, beginning about Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, and I know that impacts a lot of people right now in the heat of calving season, things like that. So it's nice to have someone else kind of talking about a little bit more of that predictive weather that we're going to be seeing coming next week. This will come out on Monday. So that'll be nice for a lot of producers to be able to see a little bit more of that. As far as just a hope for a wetter spring, a lot of the Midwest is in a drought right now. We've seen some pretty intense drought conditions across the U.S. this year. How do you guys come up with those predictive models for the spring? We're kind of hoping to see a little bit more of a wetter spring from, like you said, these later snows that we're going to be getting, but then hopefully just some nice moisture in the early spring as well. Can you explain a little bit more about the predictive models on that end?
So we have a predictive LRC model. It's called the LRC model, and it goes out almost a year ahead, but it's accurate. Its sweet spot of accuracy is from around January through September. So through the planting, growing, and harvest season for ag, and for as we go into the warmer season, that's when it's the most accurate. And it uses the cycles, so it applies the cycles of the weather pattern. And this year, it's showing that wetter than average zone over western and southern Kansas. I think it's going to expand into western Nebraska, but as you said, there are some drought areas across the western plains right now, and droughts are either shrinking or they're expanding. And this one actually is slightly shrinking, which is good news. That it probably will increase its momentum of shrinking, and it's something we will know a lot more in the next few weeks. But it is not expanding. It's actually getting slightly less. I'd like to see that shrinking happen a little more actively, but that may happen here as we go into March and April, because that we're going to get into the warmer season, and there's another factor is La Nina. La Nina is the cooling of the tropical Pacific Ocean, and this ends up being either a very weak La Nina winter or a neutral winter, and the water in the Pacific is warming right now, so that means that probably won't be as big of a factor. That also leans towards a wetter spring. So there's a lot of arrows pointing up in the direction of a wetter spring, which means a shrinking of those drought areas. But the areas that have been getting missed by snow this winter and the drought continues, though there's a reason for that. The LRC is the reason for that, and these other factors as well. That's why there's still some struggle areas that we'll have to monitor to see if the drought starts expanding. But right now it is shrinking slowly.
Good to know. As far as like March and April outlook and stuff like that, as far as like a temperature wise goes, do we have any predictions on if we're going to start to see a warm up coming, or are we going to continue to kind of experience some of these elongated winters that we've been experiencing in the past years as well?
This is an interesting winter we've been having. As we discussed, beginning late this week and going into the next week, we're seeing a big warm up. That Arctic oscillation influence is going back from very deep negative to more neutral or slightly positive, which leans towards a big warm up. So we're about to see the Arctic air exit. Will it come back again in March, late March and early April? It's rare that would happen that late, but there still will be a stronger cold front. Remember, it's roughly a 6-week cycle. So 6 weeks from now will be around the end of March. And so the chance of an Arctic blast is lower because it's the end of March, but it still could be a really strong cold blast, maybe not a pure Arctic blast. That is likely at the end of March. In one of the next segments, we'll have to go over what the model shows for the last freeze dates, because our model is predicting a potential late freeze in the northern plains up in the Dakotas. And how will that impact farther south? That's something I need to do some analysis. But even in mid-May, it showed a frost near 32 degrees up there. So that's when that pattern returns again in May. So just know this cold part of the pattern does cycle every 6 weeks, and it'll come back. So we'll have to watch that for possible late freezes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're excited to continue this partnership with Gary and their team at Weather 2020 and continue bringing all of our listeners and just people within the Cattle USA community just some really amazing predictive weather models, talking about the weather, talking about patterns that we're seeing, things like that, so that you guys can continue to stay prepared and prepped for upcoming seasons and all of the things like that. So like Gary said, next time we'll definitely have to talk a little bit more about those last freeze dates, some more predictive stuff that might be coming out as, you know, weather continues to change and just everything continues to develop and stuff. So we hope that today we were able to talk a little bit about just introducing this partnership a little bit more, and then what you guys are going to kind of be seeing over the next week, and then also coming into spring a little bit more. So Gary, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate your knowledge and just insight on everything, and then also your LRC and everything that you put into that predictive weather model and how it's kind of impacting agriculture today. So thank you, Gary, for coming on. And to all of you listeners out there, we will see you all next week on not next week, we'll see you all tomorrow on another episode of the Cattle USA Daily Podcast. We hope you all have a great week. Stay warm out there and try not to freeze your toes off. Have a good one, y'all.